Today, we're going to take a look at the remarks made by the Fed Chair Jerome Powell, the big guy from the Federal Reserve, the entity responsible for controlling the money supply and interest rates for the economy in the United States and the United States fiat currency, the US dollar. Obviously, if the reason that Bitcoin dipped at all was attributed to what Jerome Powell said, which I'm about to go over, whoever sold on this news, you have paper hands and you need to watch this video. For those of you who saw this dip in price in Bitcoin as a precious buying opportunity, then I know you already know. And the more you understand of how the Federal Reserve works, where this deficit is coming from and who has to front the bill, and what is your plan B or what should it be? Once you know the answer to those questions, your perspective on the future validity and current validity of Bitcoin right now as a hedge against inflation, as a monetary tool that you can use to actually have freedom financially. This video is a reminder for those of you who might have forgot. This video will serve as hopefully a good introduction to the rabbit hole of understanding what the Federal Reserve does, what inflation is, and where it comes from, and who is fronting the bill for it. I'm going to go over the current deficit of the US, what the Federal Reserve does to create more money, create more inflation, and what this all means for Bitcoin in the end. So let's get right into it. All right, so these are the statements from Jerome Powell. He says that the U.S. is running a very large deficit that needs to be addressed, ideally sooner rather than later, right off the bat. Whenever a government is saying that they're in a deficit, it means that they're spending more than they're earning in revenue. Governments can earn revenue in all sorts of ways, like through exports or more popularly through taxation. And the U.S. is spending more than they're earning. Do you know what the largest export of the U.S. is? Their debt. That means their U.S. Treasury bonds. They sell their debt to outside countries or other individuals, and this debt is considered to be very, very safe, guaranteed. Why? Because of the faith in the U.S. government's ability to tax its citizens, period, full stop. We can all assume that the strength of the U.S. government and its military, the big reason why there's so much faith in that ability to tax their citizens. Also kind of sad that he calls it a very large deficit instead of saying the actual numbers. That is $1.2 trillion deficit. The U.S. government has spent $1.2 trillion more than what they are earning in revenue. I saw other comments that he made something in the regards of, this is what keeps me up at night. We have to, find a balance in the monetary policy to address this issue. Furthermore, he also says that I'm going to give you the traditional answer to some extent. That it is, we just don't. Fiscal policy is a job for elected people. We are not elected people, so we don't comment on it, particularly in advance of a presidential election. So politics running amok yet again in the fiscal policy of the United States. Furthermore, he's claiming he can't comment on it because he's not an elected official, yet the job of the Federal Reserve is to be in charge of the money supply of the United States, the US dollar. So if the Fed Chair, Jerome Powell, isn't the one to make a statement about this, who the heck is? So with a $1.2 trillion deficit, how can they increase their revenue? Well, they can probably tax their citizens even more, even though we're seeing videos all the time of US citizens just utterly defeated that they can't make enough in their jobs to live a comfortable life. So if you push that taxation a little bit more, you might find that that might break. So what is the other option? Actually the biggest export for the US economy is US debt. What is that? It's in the form of a US Treasury's bond. Now this is where we are peeking into the rabbit hole, guys. Welcome to your introduction to what is really happening with the US and where is this debt actually coming from? So you should be asking yourself at this point, if you don't already know, what is a U.S. Treasury bond? I'm going to go ahead and read you off a quick definition. Treasury bonds, also known as T-bonds, are government debt securities issued by the U.S. federal government that have maturities of 20 to 30 years. So for those who buy these, they hold them for 20 to 30 years. They earn periodic interest until maturity, at which point the owner is also paid a par amount equal to the principal. Treasury bonds are part of the larger category of U.S. sovereign debt, known collectively as treasuries, which are typically regarded as virtually risk-free since they are backed by the U.S. government's ability to tax its citizens. So if all else fails, the U.S. can make good on this debt through taxing their citizens. You might be wondering, okay, if the U.S. is selling this debt to other countries or other individuals or corporations, what have you, you have to ask yourself, where is that money coming from that they're exporting? What are they dipping into to make this money move from point A to point B? They are essentially printing this money. They're not literally printing it on paper. They're pressing buttons, adding zeros to the money supply of the US dollar. And if, for those of you who have never researched anything online before, you're very new, you don't know how to do it, for example, for the purposes of this video, to get a clear definition, I typed this into the web search. Where does the money come from to create the U.S. Treasury bonds? I found a link to Investopedia where I'm reading this to you now. The Fed could initiate open market operations where it buys or borrows Treasury bills from commercial banks to inject money. The central bank will add cash to the accounts called bank reserves that banks are required to keep. That increases the money supply. So they are printing money out of thin air, selling it to other nations, other corporations, and they're promising to pay it back because if all else fails, they will tax their citizens to make good on that debt. This is the monetary policy of the United States and a lot of countries for that matter, but the U.S. is just going crazy right now with its money printing. This is what Toby is talking about all the time in his videos. Sometimes I do give him a hard time about it because I think he's being a little bit repetitive. But you have to understand, and I am absolutely wrong for being annoyed at that, because it is so important to hammer that point home. It affects everyone who gets paid or has to interact with US dollars or any fiat currency for that matter, because most people get paid through work. That is time spent at jobs. That is their time of their lives, not spent with family, not spent enriching their lives, most likely. Usually it is time spent sacrificing their quality of life, their time for fiat currency that their government is printing and printing and printing out of thin air. And every time that the US prints more cash, it has to print more to cover the cost of the first one that they print. It's called a debt-based system. That's what that means. And they are creating, and what they're doing is they are inflating the money supply. That means the time that you spend at your job, your money that you're earning for that is becoming weaker. It's becoming less valuable. Your time spent at your job is becoming less valuable, yet that is time that you cannot get back. This, my friends, is why individuals around the world, corporations around the world, countries around the world are now adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets, Bitcoin as their plan B, their savings account. It is an amazing inflation hedge. Do you know why? Because unlike the US dollar or any fiat currency who has a central banker that is influenced by the politics of the day, who refuse to make any public comment on their actual goal or strategy for reducing the debt. He didn't say anything about that. Unlike that mess, Bitcoin has an inflation rate that is decreasing every 4 years. It is mathematically proven to be an honest system for transactions. And we know exactly how much Bitcoin has ever existed at any point in time in the past, will ever exist at any point in the future. Tell me you can say the same thing, that you as an individual freely can audit yourself. You cannot. but Bitcoin allows this. Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer system for freedom, for you and I, the individual, to take control over your monetary situation, your financial freedom. That, my friends, is why when news like this comes out about the Federal Reserve and their intense and their insane deficit, the paper hands sold to create a dip, and those who know all about what I just went over in today's video bought it because they know that Bitcoin is incredibly valuable. And quite frankly, I can't wait until it's no longer, priced in terms of US dollars, but one Bitcoin will always equal one Bitcoin, and we will know exactly how many Bitcoin exists at any point in time, and no one can affect that supply to serve their special interests. I think that's a beautiful thing. If you found this video to be informative, I really encourage you to use this video and share it to anyone who you have conversations of this about. I know more and more people are becoming aware of inflation because it is being just smacked in their face. They're realizing that the story they were sold, going to school, getting their college degrees, isn't working. They got their degree, they're in an immense amount of student debt, and now their job that should be able to afford at least an average house, you need 3 times the income, in fact, to afford that now. So that is the effects of inflation. That is the reason why I think everyone should have at least some exposure to Bitcoin. So if you know someone like that, first say sorry, give them a hug, and share this video with them so that they can learn other ways that they can take real control over their financial future. And for their future generations to come will definitely benefit from this as well. Thank you so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe. If you want to know what we're doing with our Bitcoin investments, how we are storing them, if we are trading them, there's no better place for you to go than learningcrypto.com. Stay safe out there, guys. I'll see you in the next one.